Jake Mitchell pressed his face against the small window of the transport shuttle and watched in amazement as Kepler Station University grew larger before his eyes. The massive space station spun slowly in the darkness of space, its silver towers reaching out like arms around a central hub. Thousands of lights twinkled across its surface, and smaller ships moved around it like busy insects. "First time seeing it?" asked the pilot, a friendly woman with short brown hair named Captain Davis. "Yes," Jake replied, unable to hide his excitement. "It's incredible. I never thought I would actually make it here." Captain Davis smiled. "Well, you're about to make history, son. First human exchange student program with the Galactic Academic Coalition. That's something to be proud of." Jake nodded, still staring out the window. At 22 years old, he had dreamed of studying alien life forms since he was a child growing up in Colorado. When Earth received the invitation to send students to the galaxy's most famous university, Jake had worked harder than ever to earn his place. Out of millions of applicants, only 20 humans had been chosen. The shuttle docked with a gentle thump, and Jake gathered his single bag of belongings. Everything else he needed would be provided by the university. As he walked through the airlock, he felt the artificial gravity adjust slightly. The air tasted different too, cleaner somehow, with a faint metallic smell. The docking bay was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up so high Jake could barely see the top. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the space. Some walked on two legs like humans, while others had 4, 6, or even more. Jake saw beings that looked like giant insects, others that seemed to be made of crystal, and some that floated rather than walked. "Jake Mitchell?" called a voice behind him. Jake turned to see another human walking toward him, a young woman with long black hair and dark eyes. She wore the same blue uniform that Jake had been given. "I'm Emma Rodriguez," she said, extending her hand. "From Texas. Looks like we're the only humans on this shuttle." "Nice to meet you," Jake said, shaking her hand. "Colorado? I guess we stick together out here." Emma laughed. "That's probably a good idea. I've been reading about some of these alien species, and we're definitely the new kids on the block." A tall, thin alien with gray skin and large black eyes approached them. It wore a dark robe that seemed to shimmer in the light. When it spoke, its voice was deep and measured. "Human students Mitchell and Rodriguez, I am Assistant Director Crane. You will follow me to orientation." Jake and Emma exchanged glances and followed the alien through a series of corridors. The walls were covered with what looked like living metal that shifted and changed color as they walked. Other students moved past them, some giving curious looks at the humans, others ignoring them completely. The station houses over 50,000 students from 147 different species, Crane explained as they walked. "You will find the facilities quite advanced compared to your homeworld's educational institutions." They entered a large hall filled with floating platforms instead of chairs. Students sat or stood on these platforms, which adjusted automatically to accommodate different body types. Jake and Emma found empty platforms near the back and carefully sat down. A massive alien stepped forward to address the crowd. It looked like a lizard that had learned to walk upright, with dark green scales and bright yellow eyes. Its voice boomed across the hall. "New students, I am Professor Thane, Director of Xenobiology Studies. You are here to learn about life forms from across the galaxy. Some of you will study peaceful species. Others will focus on dangerous predators. All of you must understand that knowledge comes with responsibility." Professor Thane's yellow eyes seemed to find Jake and Emma in the crowd. "Our newest students come from a recently discovered world called Earth. Humans show promise, though their capabilities remain largely untested. They will be given the same opportunities as all students, but they must prove themselves worthy of our advanced teachings." Jake felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. It was clear that humans were viewed as primitive newcomers who might not belong here. After orientation, Crane led them to their dormitory. The rooms were small but comfortable, with walls that could change color and temperature based on the occupant's preferences. Jake's room was next to Emma's, and across the hall lived a student who looked like a walking tree with blue leaves. "Your classes begin tomorrow," Crane told them. "You have been assigned to advanced xenobiology with Professor Thane. Do not disappoint him. He does not tolerate weakness or failure." That evening, Jake and Emma met in the dormitory's common area. The space was filled with students from dozens of different worlds, all talking in various languages and sounds. Some communicated through colors that flashed across their skin, while others used musical tones. "Are you nervous?" Emma asked, sipping a drink that tasted like liquid starlight from the food dispenser. Terrified, Jake admitted. Did you hear what Professor Thane said? We have to prove ourselves. What if we can't keep up with students who have been studying galactic science their whole lives? Emma set down her drink and looked at him seriously. Then we work twice as hard. We didn't come this far to give up now. A new voice interrupted them. Excuse me, are you the humans? They turned to see a student who looked almost human, except for silver skin and completely black eyes. It moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. I am Tal from the Meridian system. I wanted to introduce myself. My people have heard stories about your species. You are said to have unusual abilities. What kind of abilities? Jake asked. Your emotional range is supposedly much wider than most species. Some say you can form bonds with creatures that others cannot. But these are probably just rumors. Before Jake could respond, a loud alarm began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors and an announcement echoed from speakers in the walls. Attention, all students. Report to your dormitories immediately. Security alert in progress. This is not a drill. Students began moving quickly toward their rooms. Some of the alien students looked frightened while others seemed merely annoyed by the interruption. What do you think is happening? Emma asked as they hurried down the corridor. I don't know, Jake replied. But something tells me we're about to find out what life is really like out here. As they reached their rooms, Jake caught a glimpse through a window of security officers running through distant corridors. Their weapons were drawn, and they moved with the urgency of people facing serious danger. Jake closed his door and sat on his bed, staring at the alien symbols on his wall screen that he couldn't yet read. Tomorrow he would start his xenobiology classes and begin learning about the dangerous creatures that live throughout the galaxy. He had no way of knowing that one of those creatures was about to change his life forever. The next morning, Jake woke to the sound of his door chime. The wall screen showed Emma standing in the hallway, already dressed in her uniform and carrying a tablet. Come on, sleepyhead, she called through the door. First day of advanced xenobiology starts in 30 minutes. Jake quickly got dressed and joined Emma in the corridor. The security alert from the previous night had ended without explanation, and the station seemed back to normal. Students moved through the halls chatting and laughing as if nothing unusual had happened. Did you find out what the alert was about? Jake asked as they walked toward the classroom section. I asked our neighbor with the blue leaves, but he just said it happens sometimes. Apparently, the station has a lot of dangerous research going on, so security alerts aren't that unusual. They found their classroom after getting lost twice in the maze of corridors. The room was large and circular, with seats arranged in rising levels around a central demonstration area. Most of the seats were already filled with alien students of various shapes and sizes. Jake and Emma found empty seats near the middle of the room. The student next to Jake looked like a giant mantis with silver skin and 4 arms. It nodded politely when Jake sat down but didn't speak. Professor Thane entered the room through a side door, his heavy footsteps echoing on the metal floor. His yellow eyes swept across the class, pausing briefly on Jake and Emma before moving on. Today we begin with practical observation, Professor Thane announced. Theoretical knowledge means nothing without direct experience with living specimens. He pressed a control on his tablet, and the lights in the room dimmed. The central demonstration area lit up with a bright white glow. You will observe a Class 5 predator, recently captured from the Outer Rim worlds. This specimen represents one of the most dangerous life forms known to galactic science. A door opened in the floor of the demonstration area, and a metal platform rose up. On the platform sat a containment unit that hummed with energy. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see something moving inside. The creature you are about to see is called a Nexus Stalker, Professor Thane continued. Our research staff has given this particular specimen the designation Vex. It possesses intelligence equal to most sentient species, along with natural weapons that can cut through reinforced steel. Dr. Lisa Chen entered the demonstration area wearing a white lab coat. She was human, which surprised Jake. He hadn't expected to see another person from Earth working at the university. Dr. Chen will demonstrate the creature's capabilities while maintaining safe distance through our containment fields, Professor Thane explained. Dr. Chen nodded to the class and activated her controls. The containment unit's walls became completely transparent, giving everyone a clear view of the creature inside. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The creature was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It looked like a cross between a big cat and a dragon, about the size of a large dog. Its body was covered in sleek black scales that seemed to absorb light. Golden eyes watched the room with obvious intelligence, and Jake could see retractable claws that gleamed like metal. Nexus stalkers are pack hunters from high-gravity worlds, Dr. Chen explained to the class. They use stealth, intelligence, and coordinated attacks to take down prey much larger than themselves. The creature, Vex, moved around its containment unit with fluid grace. It seemed to be studying each student in the class, its golden eyes moving from face to face with obvious interest. The containment field uses quantum barriers to prevent escape, Dr. Chen continued. The energy output is sufficient to contain creatures 10 times this size. Several alien students asked questions about the creature's biology and hunting methods. Jake found himself fascinated by the way Vex moved and responded to the sounds around it. The creature's ears, which looked like small fins, turned toward each speaker as they talked. Now we will demonstrate the creature's problem-solving abilities, Dr. Chen said. She activated another control, and a small puzzle box appeared inside the containment unit. The box had several colored panels that needed to be pressed in the correct order to open. Vex approached the box cautiously, sniffing it with what looked like curiosity rather than aggression. After a few moments, it began pressing the colored panels with its claws. Within minutes, the box opened to reveal a piece of synthetic meat. The class murmured with appreciation. Even Jake was impressed by how quickly the creature had solved the puzzle. As you can see, the specimen shows remarkable cognitive abilities, Professor Thane said. This intelligence makes Class 5 predators extremely dangerous. They can learn, adapt, and plan attacks. That was when everything went wrong. Warning lights suddenly began flashing throughout the room. The containment unit's energy field flickered and sparked. Dr. Chen frantically pressed controls on her tablet, but the field continued to weaken. "System malfunction," Dr. Chen called out. Everyone remained calm. "The backup systems will engage momentarily." But the backup systems didn't engage. With a sound like breaking glass, the containment field collapsed completely. Vex was free. The reaction was immediate. Alien students screamed and rushed toward the exits. The mantis-like student next to Jake moved so fast it was just a blur. Professor Thane shouted orders while backing toward the door. "Emergency protocols," Dr. Chen yelled into her communicator. "Security to classroom 7 immediately." Emma grabbed Jake's arm. "Come on, we need to get out of here." But Jake couldn't move. While everyone else fled in terror, he found himself staring at Vex. The creature had stepped out of its containment unit and was looking around the room with what seemed like confusion rather than rage. "Jake, what are you doing?" Emma called from near the door. "That thing could kill you." Vex's golden eyes found Jake across the room. For a moment, human and predator stared at each other. Jake expected to see hunger or aggression in those eyes. Instead, he saw something that looked almost like curiosity. The creature took a step toward him, then another. Its movements were slow and careful, not the aggressive rush of a hunting predator. Several students who hadn't yet escaped screamed warnings at Jake. "Don't move," Dr. Chen called from across the room. Sudden movements might trigger its hunting instincts. But Jake wasn't afraid. Something deep inside him, some instinct he couldn't explain, told him that Vex wasn't planning to attack. The creature approached until it was only a few feet away, then sat down on its haunches like a well-trained dog. Vex tilted its head to one side, studying Jake with obvious intelligence. Then it did something that shocked everyone in the room. It made a sound that was almost like purring. Security officers burst through the doors with weapons drawn, ready to tranquilize the escaped predator. They stopped in amazement when they saw the scene before them. The most dangerous creature in the station's research facility was sitting calmly next to a human student, making contented sounds and showing no sign of aggression whatsoever. "Well," Dr. Chen said quietly, lowering her communicator, "I've never seen anything like that before." Professor Thane stared at Jake and Vex with his yellow eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "Class 5 predators don't form social bonds with unknown species." But as Jake slowly reached out his hand and Vex gently pressed its scaled head against his palm, it became clear that impossible things sometimes happened when humans were involved. The demonstration had gone completely wrong, but it had revealed something that would change everything anyone thought they knew about humans and their place in the galaxy. Jake found himself in a small white room with no windows and only one door. The walls were bare except for a single screen that showed the time and temperature. A simple bed, desk, and chair were the only furniture. This was the quarantine facility, and Jake had been here for 3 days. Every few hours, someone would come to ask him questions. Dr. Chen visited most often, always carrying her tablet and wearing the same concerned expression. Professor Thane had come once, his yellow eyes studying Jake like he was a puzzle that needed solving. "Tell me again what you felt when the creature approached you," Dr. Chen said during her morning visit. Jake sat on the edge of his bed and tried to find the right words. "I wasn't scared. I know that sounds crazy, but I felt like Vex wasn't going to hurt me. It was almost like meeting a friendly dog for the first time." Dr. Chen made notes on her tablet. "And you had never seen this type of creature before? No pictures or videos during your preparation for the exchange program? Nothing. Earth doesn't have any records of Nexus stalkers. We barely know anything about life outside our own solar system." The door chimed and Commander Stone entered the room. He was a tall, broad man with gray hair and serious eyes. Jake had learned that he was the head of security for the entire station, and he was also human. "Dr. Chen, I need to speak with the boy," Commander Stone said. Dr. Chen looked like she wanted to argue, but she gathered her things and left. Commander Stone took her chair and stared at Jake for a long moment. "Son, I'm going to ask you some direct questions, and I want honest answers. Are you working for any Earth government agency?" "No, sir. I'm just a college student." "Do you have any special training with dangerous animals?" "I helped at an animal shelter back home, but nothing like this." Commander Stone leaned forward. "Then explain to me how a college kid from Colorado can calm down a creature that trained xenobiologists are afraid to get near." "I honestly don't know, sir. It just felt natural." Before Commander Stone could respond, an alarm sounded in the corridor outside. Not the sharp emergency alarm from a few days ago, but a gentler tone that seemed to indicate a routine announcement. "Attention, quarantine facility," came a voice over the speakers. "The specimen is showing signs of distress. Dr. Chen, report to observation deck immediately." Commander Stone's radio crackled to life. "Commander, you need to see this. The creature won't eat, won't respond to any stimuli. It just sits by the wall closest to the quarantine section." Dr. Chen's voice came through the radio next. "Commander, I think Vex is trying to get closer to Jake. The creature seems to be experiencing separation anxiety." Commander Stone looked at Jake with a mixture of suspicion and amazement. "Separation anxiety? From a Class 5 predator? Because of you." An hour later, Jake found himself in the observation deck overlooking Vex's new containment area. This room was much larger than the classroom unit, with trees, rocks, and a small pool of water. It was designed to make the creature more comfortable during long-term study. But Vex wasn't using any of these comforts. The creature sat pressed against the wall that faced toward the quarantine section, its golden eyes staring in Jake's direction even though it couldn't see him. Emma was waiting in the observation deck when Jake arrived. She looked relieved to see him and immediately gave him a hug. "Are you okay?" "They wouldn't let me visit until today," Emma said. "I'm fine, just confused about all of this." Dr. Chen was standing at the observation window with several other researchers. When she saw Jake, she motioned for him to join them. "Watch what happens when Vex realizes you're here," she said. Jake approached the window, and immediately Vex's behavior changed. The creature stood up, its ears perking up, and it began making the same purring sound from the classroom. Vex started pacing back and forth, clearly excited. "Remarkable," said one of the researchers, a tall alien with blue skin. "The specimen shows clear recognition and positive emotional response." "We'd like to try a controlled interaction," Dr. Chen explained to Jake. "With proper safety measures." Of course, Commander Stone crossed his arms. "Absolutely not. That thing could tear him apart in seconds." "Actually," Dr. Chen said, pulling up data on her tablet, "our scans show that Vex's stress hormones drop to normal levels when Jake is nearby. The creature is calmer with him than it has ever been in captivity." After much debate, they agreed to a test. Jake would enter a secure chamber that connected to Vex's habitat through a reinforced window. If anything went wrong, Jake could retreat immediately. Jake put on protective gear and entered the chamber. The moment Vex saw him through the window, the creature became visibly excited. It pressed its scaled face against the glass and continued purring. "Try placing your hand against the glass," Dr. Chen suggested through the intercom. Jake pressed his palm against the window. Vex immediately placed its paw on the other side, matching Jake's hand position. The creature's eyes closed in what looked like contentment. "This is unprecedented," the blue-skinned researcher whispered. "Class 5 predators don't show affectionate behavior toward other species." Over the following days, Jake spent hours with Vex in supervised sessions. Each interaction revealed new aspects of their unusual bond. Vex seemed to understand Jake's emotions, becoming more active when Jake was happy and more protective when Jake seemed worried. During one session, a maintenance worker accidentally dropped a tool near Jake's chamber. The loud crash startled everyone, but Vex's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The creature positioned itself between Jake and the source of the noise, growling low in its throat with hackles raised. "It's protecting him," Emma observed from the observation deck. She had been documenting every interaction for her own research project. "But from what?" Commander Stone asked. "There's no actual threat." "Vex doesn't know that," Dr. Chen replied. "The creature has adopted Jake as part of its social group. Pack behavior." Jake found that he was changing too. He became more aware of his surroundings, noticing sounds and movements that he had never paid attention to before. Sometimes he could predict Vex's reactions before they happened, as if he was learning to think like the creature. "I think I understand what's happening," Jake told Emma during one of her visits. "What do you mean?" "Vex isn't just bonding with me as a friend. I think it sees me as its pack, and I'm starting to see it the same way." Emma made notes in her journal. "That would explain the protective behavior. But Jake, you're human and it's an alien predator. How is this even possible?" "Maybe that's what makes humans special," Jake said, watching Vex play with a puzzle toy in its habitat. "Maybe we can connect with other species in ways that no one else in the galaxy can, Professor." Thane arrived that evening with news that would change everything. "The University Council has made a decision," he announced to Jake, Dr. Chen, and Commander Stone. "They want to study this bond further. Jake, you and the creature will be partners in a new research program." "What does that mean exactly?" Jake asked. "It means Vex will be assigned to you permanently. You'll work together, live in connected quarters, and help us understand how humans can form these impossible connections." Jake looked through the window at Vex, who was watching him with those intelligent golden eyes. The creature seemed to sense that something important was happening. "What do you say, partner?" Jake whispered to Vex. The creature's purring grew louder, and Jake knew that his life would never be ordinary again. 2 weeks had passed since Jake and Vex became official research partners. They now shared connected living quarters in a special section of the station. Jake's room looked normal enough, but it connected through a large doorway to Vex's habitat, which had been designed to feel like a natural environment with plants, rocks, and running water. The arrangement worked better than anyone had expected. Vex spent most of the day in Jake's room, either sleeping on a large cushion or watching Jake study. At night, the creature returned to its own space, but Jake often fell asleep to the sound of Vex moving around nearby. "Today we're going to try something new," Dr. Chen announced as she led Jake and Vex to a different part of the station. They entered a massive dome-shaped room that contained what looked like a small forest. Trees reached up toward the curved ceiling, and Jake could hear the sound of birds singing somewhere in the branches. "This is our biodome," Dr. Chen explained. "We use it to test how different species interact with natural environments. Your assignment today is to work together to solve a series of puzzles hidden throughout this space." Emma was already waiting inside the dome with her recording equipment. She had become the official documenter of Jake and Vex's partnership, and her reports were being read by scientists throughout the galaxy. "What kind of puzzles?" Jake asked. "Environmental challenges," Dr. Chen replied. "Things like finding hidden food sources, navigating obstacles, and working together to reach difficult places. Other student pairs have struggled with these exercises, even when using traditional partner species." Jake looked down at Vex, who was sniffing the air with obvious interest. The forest smells seemed to excite the creature, and its golden eyes were bright with curiosity. "Ready, partner?" Jake asked. Vex made its purring sound and brushed against Jake's leg. The first challenge was simple enough. They needed to find 3 hidden markers somewhere in the dome. Jake started by looking in the obvious places under rocks and behind trees, but found nothing. Vex had a different approach. The creature moved through the forest with its nose to the ground, following scent trails that Jake couldn't detect. Within minutes, Vex led him to the first marker, which was hidden inside a hollow log. "Excellent teamwork." Emma called from her observation position. The second marker was more difficult. It was placed high in a tree, too high for Jake to reach even by climbing. Jake stared up at it, trying to figure out how to get closer. Vex seemed to understand the problem. The creature studied the tree for a moment, then positioned itself at the base of the trunk. It looked at Jake and made a soft chirping sound. "I think it wants me to climb on its back," Jake said. "Be careful," Dr. Chen warned through the radio. Jake carefully climbed onto Vex's back. The creature's scales were smooth and warm, and Jake could feel the powerful muscles beneath them. Vex slowly stood up, raising Jake high enough to reach the marker. "Amazing," Emma whispered. They solved that faster than any other team this semester. The third challenge was the most complex. They needed to cross a stream that was too wide to jump, but the only bridge was a fallen log that looked too narrow for Jake to balance on. Vex studied the problem, then did something that surprised everyone watching. The creature waded into the stream and positioned itself next to the log, creating a living handrail that Jake could use for balance. "That level of cooperation is extraordinary," Dr. Chen said. Vex is anticipating Jake's needs and adapting its behavior to help. As they completed more exercises, Jake began to notice changes in himself. His senses seemed sharper than before. He could hear sounds in the forest that he had missed earlier, and he found himself moving more quietly and carefully, like Vex. "I think I'm learning to think like a predator," Jake told Emma during a break. "What do you mean?" "I'm noticing things differently. The way shadows fall, which directions the wind is blowing, where the best hiding spots are. It's like Vex is teaching me without meaning to." Emma made notes in her journal. "And what about Vex? Is it changing too?" Jake watched his partner drinking from the stream. "It's more patient now. Nexus stalkers are supposed to be aggressive hunters, but Vex waits for me, matches my pace. It's learning to be gentle." That evening, as they returned to their quarters, Commander Stone was waiting for them with a serious expression. "We need to talk," he said. They gathered in Dr. Chen's office, where Commander Stone activated a privacy shield that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "We've been detecting unusual activity around the station," Commander Stone began. "Equipment failures, security breaches, things that don't seem connected but are too frequent to be coincidence." "What kind of activity?" Dr. Chen asked. "Someone has been accessing restricted files about the human exchange program. They've also been trying to hack into the research data about Jake and Vex." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Why would someone want that information? That's what we need to find out. But there's more. This morning, Jake and Vex detected an intruder near the research labs. The security cameras didn't pick up anything, but their behavior suggested someone was there. It was true. During their morning walk, Vex had suddenly become alert and started growling at an empty corridor. Jake had felt it too, a sense that they were being watched even though he couldn't see anyone. "We think someone is planning something," Commander Stone continued. "And we believe Jake and Vex might be targets." Dr. Chen leaned forward in her chair. "Who would want to harm them?" "There are groups in the galaxy that oppose human integration. They see your species as a threat to established order. The fact that humans can bond with dangerous predators would be very threatening to them." Jake looked at Vex, who was lying quietly beside his chair but with ears alert, listening to every word. "What do we do?" Jake asked. "We stay vigilant," Commander Stone replied, "and we use the advantages that your partnership gives us. Jake, you and Vex can detect things that our normal security systems miss. You might be our best defense against whatever is coming." That night, Jake lay in bed listening to Vex moving around in the connected habitat. The creature seemed restless, getting up frequently to check the doors and windows. "You sense it too, don't you?" Jake whispered into the darkness. A soft purring sound came from the next room, but Jake could hear the tension beneath it. Something was coming, something that threatened not just them but everything they represented. The bond between human and predator had become stronger than anyone imagined. Now they would need that strength to face an enemy that wanted to destroy the very idea that such connections were possible. Jake woke to the sound of emergency alarms blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in his room, and the automated voice system was announcing something in multiple languages. Vex was already awake, standing at the connecting doorway with hackles raised and ears pinned back. "Attention all students and staff," came Commander Stone's voice over the speakers. "The station is under attack. Proceed to emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Jake quickly got dressed and grabbed his communication device. Emma's voice came through immediately. "Jake, where are you? There are explosions in the research section and something has released the specimens from the predator labs." Through his window, Jake could see chaos in the corridors. Students and staff were running in all directions while security officers tried to maintain order. In the distance, he could hear the sounds of creatures that definitely shouldn't be loose on a space station. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through Jake's radio. "Jake, don't go to the shelters. We need you and Vex in the security center. Commander Stone specifically requested you." Jake looked at Vex, who was watching him with those intelligent golden eyes. "Looks like we're not hiding today, partner." They made their way through the station's corridors, avoiding the main passages where panicked crowds were still moving toward safety. Vex led the way, using senses that Jake was still learning to understand. Several times the creature stopped and growled softly, warning Jake about danger around corners. When they reached the security center, they found it in controlled chaos. Commander Stone was coordinating response teams while Dr. Chen monitored various screens showing different parts of the station. "Jake, thank God you're here," Commander Stone said. "We've identified our attackers. They call themselves the Purity Coalition, and they've been planning this for months." "What do they want?" Jake asked. "To end the human exchange program permanently. They believe humans are a contamination that will corrupt galactic civilization. The fact that you can bond with Class 5 predators terrifies them." Dr. Chen pointed to one of her screens. "They've released over a dozen dangerous specimens throughout the station. Our security teams are overwhelmed trying to contain them without harming students." "Where's Emma?" Jake asked, suddenly worried about his friend. "Safe in Shelter 7 with most of the other students. But Jake, we need your help. You and Vex can track these creatures better than any of our security teams." Commander Stone activated a tactical display that showed the station's layout. Red dots marked the locations of escaped specimens, while blue dots showed security teams. "Most of our people are here, here, and here." He pointed to various locations. "But we've lost contact with this entire section. Something big is moving through the maintenance tunnels and our sensors can't track it." Vex moved closer to the display and sniffed at it, as if trying to understand what the images meant. Then the creature made a series of soft clicking sounds that Jake had never heard before. "I think Vex knows what kind of creature it is," Jake said. "Those sounds, they're like a warning call." "A warning about what?" Dr. Chen asked. Jake closed his eyes and tried to understand what Vex was telling him. Over the past weeks, he had gotten better at interpreting his partner's communications. Something that hunts in packs. Something that Vex's species would normally avoid. Commander Stone's expression grew grim. "Shadow Rippers. They released Shadow Rippers into the station." Dr. Chen turned pale. "But those are Class 7 predators. They're not supposed to be kept in research facilities. The Purity Coalition must have smuggled them in," Commander Stone said. "Jake, I hate to ask this of you, but you and Vex are the only team on the station that might be able to track pack hunters like these." Jake felt fear rising in his throat, but when he looked at Vex, he saw only determination in those golden eyes. His partner was ready to hunt. "What do we need to do?" Commander Stone handed Jake a tactical vest and communication headset. "Find the Shadow Rippers and guide our security teams to them. But Jake, if things get dangerous, you get out immediately. We can't afford to lose you." Jake and Vex left the security center and headed toward the maintenance section, where the creatures had last been spotted. The corridors here were darker, with emergency lighting casting strange shadows on the walls. Vex moved differently in this environment, staying low and checking every corner before proceeding. Jake found himself copying the creature's movements without thinking about it. "I can smell something," Jake whispered into his headset, surprised by his own words. "You can smell what?" Dr. Chen's voice came back. "I don't know how to describe it. Something wrong, something that doesn't belong here." Vex confirmed his instinct with a low growl. The creature's ears were flat against its head, and every muscle in its body was tense. They followed the scent through a maze of maintenance tunnels until they reached a large chamber filled with environmental control equipment. Jake's enhanced senses, learned from weeks with Vex, told him that something was hiding in the shadows. "They're here," he whispered into his radio. "At least 3 of them, maybe more." "Security teams are 5 minutes away," Commander Stone replied. "Can you keep them contained until then?" Before Jake could answer, the Shadow Rippers attacked. They came from 3 different directions at once, moving like liquid darkness across the walls and ceiling. Each creature was about the size of Vex, but built for pure speed and stealth. Vex reacted instantly, placing itself between Jake and the nearest attacker. The two predators collided in a fury of claws and teeth, rolling across the floor in a deadly dance. Jake drew the stun weapon Commander Stone had given him, but the creatures were moving too fast for him to get a clear shot. Then his training with Vex took over, and Jake found himself moving with predatory instincts he didn't know he possessed. He rolled behind a piece of equipment just as another Shadow Ripper lunged at him. The creature's claws scraped against metal where his head had been a second before. "Vex, pattern 7, Jake called out, using one of the tactical signals they had developed during their training. His partner understood immediately. Vex broke away from its current opponent and moved to Jake's left flank, creating a coordinated defense that the Shadow Rippers hadn't expected. The battle lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. Jake and Vex moved together like they shared the same mind, each anticipating the other's actions. When security teams finally arrived, they found 2 Shadow Rippers unconscious and the third trapped in a corner, snarling but unable to escape. "Incredible," breathed the security team leader. "I've never seen anyone work with a Class 5 predator like that." But Jake wasn't listening to the praise. His radio was crackling with emergency messages from throughout the station. "All teams, the Purity Coalition leader has been spotted in the main academic section. He's armed and moving toward Shelter 7. Jake's blood went cold. Emma was in Shelter 7. "Commander, we need to get there now," Jake said into his headset. "Negative, Jake, you've done enough. Let the security teams handle this." But Vex was already moving toward the exit, and Jake knew his partner was right. The hunt wasn't over yet. "Sorry, Commander," Jake said as he followed Vex out of the chamber, "but my pack is in danger." Jake and Vex raced through the station's corridors toward Shelter 7, where Emma and dozens of other students were hiding from the attack. The emergency lights cast moving shadows on the walls, and Jake could hear the distant sounds of security teams still fighting escaped specimens throughout the station. "Jake, stop." Commander Stone's voice crackled through his headset. "The area around Shelter 7 is too dangerous. We have teams moving in from 3 directions." But Jake could feel Vex's urgency, and his own instincts told him that time was running out. "Commander, Emma is my friend. Vex considers her part of our pack. We can't just wait." As they rounded a corner, Jake saw the shelter entrance ahead. The heavy security door was sealed, which meant the students inside were safe for now. But standing in front of the door was a tall alien in dark clothing, holding what looked like an explosive device. This had to be the Purity Coalition leader. The alien was unlike any species Jake had seen before. It had gray skin covered in sharp ridges, and its eyes glowed with a cold blue light. When it spoke, its voice carried clearly through the corridor. "Humans," it said with obvious disgust. "Your kind has contaminated this place long enough. Today we end the infection." Vex crouched low beside Jake, every muscle tensed for attack. But Jake held up a hand, signaling his partner to wait. "You don't have to do this," Jake called out, stepping into view. "The students in there haven't done anything wrong." The alien turned toward Jake with the expression of pure hatred. "Haven't done anything wrong? You bond with Class 5 predators like they are pets. You corrupt the natural order of the galaxy. Your very existence is wrong." "Vex isn't corrupted," Jake said, taking a step closer. "We're partners. We help each other." "Impossible," the alien snarled. "Predators kill. It is their nature. You have twisted this creature into something unnatural." As if to prove the alien wrong, Vex moved forward slowly, not in an attack posture, but with the careful movements it used when approaching Jake. The creature made soft purring sounds, the same ones it made when trying to comfort Jake after a difficult day. The alien raised its weapon toward Vex. "Stay back, monster." That was when Jake understood something important. The alien wasn't just angry about human-predator bonding. It was afraid that everything it believed about the galaxy might be wrong. "You're scared," Jake said softly. "You're scared because if humans can bond with dangerous creatures, then maybe other species can too. Maybe the galaxy doesn't have to be divided between predators and prey." "Silence," the alien shouted. "I will not listen to your human lies." But Jake kept talking, moving closer with each word. "Vex could have killed me the first day we met. It chose not to. It chose to be my friend instead. That's not corruption, that's evolution." The alien's hand shook as it held the explosive device. "Evolution? You call this evolution? You make weapons out of predators." "No," Jake said, now close enough to see the fear in the alien's glowing eyes. We make friends. At that moment, Vex did something extraordinary. Instead of attacking the armed alien, the creature lay down on the floor and made the submissive purring sound it used when it wanted to show it wasn't a threat. The alien stared at Vex in confusion. Predators don't submit. They don't show mercy. This one does, Jake said, because it learned from me and I learned from it. That's what partnership means. Security teams chose that moment to arrive from both ends of the corridor, surrounding the alien leader. But instead of fighting, the alien dropped its weapon and fell to its knees. Impossible, it whispered. Everything we believed was wrong. Commander Stone arrived with the security teams and quickly secured the explosive device. Jake, how did you know talking would work? I didn't, Jake admitted. But Vex showed me that sometimes the best way to deal with a threat is to show that you're not threatening back. Over the following weeks, the aftermath of the attack changed everything at Kepler Station University. The Purity Coalition was disbanded, and several other alien species requested to join the human-predator bonding research. Program Emma's documentation of Jake and Vex's partnership became required reading throughout the Galactic Academic Coalition. Her research showed that humans possessed a unique form of empathy that allowed them to connect with creatures other species feared. Dr. Chen was promoted to head of a new department called Interspecies Cooperation Studies. Professor Thane, who had initially doubted human capabilities, became one of the program's strongest supporters. I was wrong about your species, he told Jake during their final class together. Humans are not primitive newcomers. You are bridges between species that have never been able to connect before. Commander Stone offered Jake a position in galactic security, working with dangerous creatures that needed to be relocated safely rather than destroyed. But the biggest change came when Jake was offered a choice that would determine the rest of his life. The Galactic Academic Coalition wants to establish a new exploration program, Dr. Chen explained during a meeting in her office. Teams of humans partnered with Class 5 predators would explore dangerous worlds and make contact with species too aggressive for normal diplomatic missions. Jake looked at Vex, who was lying beside his chair with eyes closed but ears alert, listening to every word. What would that mean exactly? It means leaving the station, traveling to worlds where few species have ever survived, using your bonding abilities to make friends with creatures that have never seen civilized beings. Emma, who had been accepted as the program's first xenobiologist, leaned forward eagerly. Jake, this could change how the galaxy works. Instead of avoiding dangerous species, we could learn to communicate with them. And Vex? Vex would be your official partner. Full status as a crew member, equal treatment, proper recognition for its intelligence and contributions. Jake thought about his life before coming to the station. Back on Earth, he had been just another college student with dreams of studying alien life. Now he was being offered the chance to explore the galaxy with his best friend, making discoveries that could bring peace between species that had been enemies for centuries. When do we start? He asked. 6 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizon, watching a previously uncharted world grow larger on the view screen. The planet's surface was covered in dense jungles where long-range scans had detected numerous Class 6 and Class 7 predators. Vex sat beside him, wearing a specially designed harness that marked it as an official crew member. The creature's golden eyes studied the planet with obvious interest. Emma worked at a nearby console, preparing her research equipment for their first planetary survey. Commander Stone, who had requested transfer to lead the mission's security team, was reviewing tactical data with his officers. Nervous? Emma asked Jake. Jake reached down to scratch behind Vex's ears, earning a contented purr from his partner. No, he said. I'm excited. We're about to meet species that no one has ever talked to before. And if they try to eat us? Jake smiled. Then we'll have to convince them that being friends is more fun than being hungry. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere, beginning humanity's first official mission as the galaxy's bridge builders between civilized worlds and dangerous predators. As they descended toward the jungle's surface, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed since that first day at Kepler Station University. He had come to space as a student hoping to learn about alien life. Now he was returning as a teacher, ready to show the galaxy that friendship was possible between any species willing to try. Vex pressed against his leg and made the soft trilling sound that meant it was ready for adventure. Jake looked out at the alien world ahead of them and knew that the best parts of their story were just beginning. In the distance, something roared from the jungle depths. It sounded dangerous and wild and completely unknown. It sounded like exactly the kind of creature that needed a friend,